Hello, everybody. How you doing, girl? Welcome to the interview with your girl Trish M. I am here, y'all. I am here. You know what we do on the interview? It's all about looking in so that we could be better out in the world that we live in. Do me a favor, share the broadcast, tag one of your partners, one of your friends, somebody that needs to hear this on today. We got a dynamic episode that I'm going to share with you. I pray everyone is having an amazing day. I'm super excited to be joining you live on the interview. If you're not following me on Apple Podcasts, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review. Shout your girl out. Give me 5 stars. Okay, 5 stars. All right. Listen, we got some good stuff we're going to be talking about on today, and I cannot wait. Y'all need to hear this. Okay. I think this is going to be like a little series part because I have been getting the same thing. Like I have literally talked to about 3, 4 people in the last week or two that says, Brother Trish, I'm just having a hard time just really getting into prayer and focusing on prayer and just really being intimate with God. And I don't know why. I just don't know why. And I was like, really? And so I gave them some ideas as to why you're having a hard time tapping into your prayer life and doing what you need to do to go to another level in the things of God. Because y'all, guess what? Prayer is intimacy with God. And so when we can't be intimate with God in our prayer time, something is off. So we're going to talk about it, okay? We are going to talk about it. If you're tuning in and listening to me or watching me for the first time, shout your girl out. Let me know where you're tuning in and listening in from. I'm super excited to be sharing with you, to be imparting into your life. You could have been anywhere, but God saw fit for you to be right here with your girl. Okay. Listen, I am so excited. I'm super stoked. Okay. So we're going to talk about this. And I pray that this helps somebody get their prayer, get your I pray that this helps somebody get your whole prayer life together so that you can find that intimacy. You can get back to just going to another level in the things of God. And so I hope y'all ready. Okay. So let's get into this. Y'all can take good notes, jot it down. This is going to be probably like a 3, 4 part thing that I'm going to be doing on the podcast because I feel like this is so needed. Like in the times that we're living in, with so much going on, so many distractions, so many frustrations, so many things that can get our attention more than God. And so I want us to get back to our first love. Our first love is the King, the God who reigns over everything. And so we're going to talk about how we can get our prayer life back in check. We need to get our prayer life all the way together. We need to be focused. So why is it so hard to pray sometimes? Why is real prayer so hard? Um, I can give you 4 reasons today. All right. 4 reasons why you may find that sometimes it's hard for you to enter into a dynamic prayer zone, prayer realm with God. And the first one I want to give you is that your flesh is weak. Okay. Sometimes our flesh is weaker than we think. And we may not know that our flesh is in a weak zone because we're like, okay, but when we talk about flesh, let's break this thing down. When we talk about flesh is really tapping into the soul realm. And so what is the soul? Your mind, your will, your intellect, so many things that you got going on in your life and things that can hinder you from tapping into the supernatural. And so we think that we're good, but in reality, there is some things in our natural life that's kind of weighing on us, that's kind of taking a lot out of us. And so it's like when it's time for us to give something to God, like that intimacy with God, our flesh is like, okay, I done had a long day. These kids, this job, my boss, the family keep calling. It's so many things. And so when you try to enter into that realm with God, sometimes it's heavy, y'all. It's heavy tapping into the spirit realm when your flesh is weak because the flesh and the spirit is always at war. And so even though your spirit knows I got to talk to God. Your spirit knows I got to pray. Your spirit knows I got to go to another level. I got to tap in. Your flesh is like, oh, give, you got 2 minutes, 5 minutes. And Jesus tells us that. He warns us of how our flesh can interfere with us being in sync or in tune with his spirit. We see this in Matthew chapter 26, verse 41. In Matthew 26:41, in the NIV version, he says, watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. And so we have sometimes difficulty suppressing our physical tiredness or the challenges that we may be facing in life. Sometimes we don't realize that we are giving so much naturally that we have very little to give God when it comes to supernatural. And so there are days when your mind is tired, when your mind is weary. Don't be stressed out. Listen, you're stressed out, you're in overload mode, you're thinking about so many things. And so we're physically exhausted from work, from our kids, from maybe even being sick, that when it's time to tap into the supernatural, it's very, very hard for us. There is a disconnect, and we feel that. It's like, okay, I feel like I'm praying, but my prayers aren't really like they're not really going anywhere because there is a spiritual disconnect. The spiritual disconnect comes when we get so overwhelmed in the natural that we can't transition into the supernatural, and we can't go into another level of worship. We can't go to another level of just praise, and then to just sit still and hear from God. Because remember, prayer is a two-way communication. Just to sit still and say, God, I'm listening. Like when God was calling, who was it, Samuel? And he was like, he kept calling him. We don't understand how to commune back to God. And so because we're just tired. So there is a disconnect. When you find yourself at nighttime or in the morning and you're falling asleep on while you're praying, or you're falling asleep while you're reading the word, you got to train your flesh. You got to train your soul. You got to train your soul, or you got to readjust some things in your life. Because let me tell you something, we don't want crumbs from God. But why is it so often that we give God the crumbs of our life, right? So we could go and give 110, right? We can go 110 on this job. We can go 110 for the family, back and forth. But when it's time, see, the enemy knows that when it's time for you to really sit down and give God your all in that intimate time, at nighttime, in the morning, in the middle of the day, whenever that is, I don't know. You know what your time is. And you find that instead of reading your word is reading you. You find that instead of meditating on trying to hear God's voice and being still and being quiet, you going to sleep. You got to understand that things are happening in the natural that you gotta try to take control of. Whether there's stress, you got to find a way to de-stress. You have to detox. You got to unwind. You got to let God in, because so many times in life, it's like, okay, I want God to bless. I want God to move. I want more of this, God. We can tell God, I want more, I need more. But God is saying, well, give me more of you. Give me more of your time. Give me more of your attention. Give me more of your focus. Stop giving me crumbs, because you don't want crumbs from me. You want major blessings from me. You want major breakthrough from me. But you got to learn how to control your flesh. Sometimes when we're angry, when we're frustrated, when we got so many things going on, it's hard for us to tap in emotionally. Like if we got bitterness in our heart, see, this all of this pertains to the flesh, right? Your spirit is willing, because you got to go into a realm, a dimension with God where you can really talk and you can really share and you can really break bread. Your spirit is willing, but your flesh is weak. Because why? You still harboring bitterness or unforgiveness. You still mad about what somebody said or didn't say, did or didn't do. So you're still holding on to stuff. And a lot of times when we hold on to all of that, the frustrations, those frustrations, we don't even realize it. But when we tap into the spirit realm and trying to talk to God, those things can hinder the intimacy that we have with God. Because like God doesn't want you to come like if you have bitterness and unforgiveness, God won't even answer your prayers. So listen to me. And there's so many reasons why God won't even answer our prayers, depending on what realm, what level you're tapping into in the flesh realm. So if you're in your flesh and you're walking in certain things, like God is not even listening to your prayers. And so that's a big thing. Like we got to learn how to control this flesh. Get this flesh under control. Get your emotions under control. And here's a big thing. Pride is a big thing. We got to recognize when we're walking in pride, right? Because pride is also a disconnector. Pride is us walking in our flesh and holding on to fleshy things. And so when we walk in pride, there's always a separation. So you got to go back and say, God, let me figure out how I'm walking in pride. Is it with my spouse? Is it with my children? You know how you just, you're self-righteous and you feel like people owe you, and that's a form of pride. But remember, pride is the original sin that was committed in heaven, and it was the thing that brought a divorce between Satan and God. And so Satan couldn't even stay in God's presence. Watch this, because he was walking in a level of pride that God was not tolerating. And so you got to understand that all of these sins that we walk in, whether it's frustration, stressed out, mad, angry, broken, bitter, all of these go back to pride, because you're caught up in self, you're caught up in emotions, you're caught up in flesh. And anytime you tap into flesh or pride and those emotional things more, then you got to realize there's always going to be a disconnect from God. God, there's no intimacy with the prideful person. So you got to ask. This is where we have to detox. You got to ask God, say, God, I need you to show me me. I need you to show me my self-righteous ways, my arrogant ways, my self-centered ways, where I know that, people hurt us, people do things to us, right? That's natural. That's called life. It's going to keep happening as long as we live. Nobody's going to say and do the right things forever and always. But what we have to do is we have to learn to control our flesh and how we handle situations, because if we don't handle it right and we handle it in a fleshy way, when we get ready to have intimacy with God through prayer, it's hard. It is really hard for us to tap into that realm with God, because we're walking in our flesh. Now, we know that our spirit is willing, our spirit desires it, but our flesh is like, you heavy, girl. You are heavy because you mad at your boss, you mad at this, or you struggling with that. You anything. And flesh. When I say flesh, it could be anything. Like some of us could be walking in fornication, right? You in a relationship and you fornicating, and so when you get ready to go and have intimacy with God, you can't have intimacy with God because you got intimacy with somebody that you ain't supposed to be intimate with on that level. And so we got to always understand that with any time there's a flesh involved, there is always a disconnect. God is saying, get out of your flesh so that you can enter into another realm of my glory. So the first thing is that our flesh is weak. So we have to understand when our flesh is weak, when we're doing things, whether it's thoughts, whether it's actions, whether it's deeds, and it can all those things can always present a disconnect between us and God. And so when we get ready to try to connect in our heads, we trying to connect, okay? We trying to connect with God. We're like, dog, well, I feel like, it's hard for me to enter in. It's hard for me to go into a level of praise and worship. It's hard for me to talk to God. Like I just feel like a strain, or I feel like this blockage. Check your flesh. You got to ask God. And this is where we come to God and we're like real. We're like, you know what, God, I just like something is going on with me. And I feel like I'm not tapping into the spirit realm. I'm not hearing you, because listen, if you're not hearing God, there is a disconnect somewhere. Okay. Because prayer is always listening for the voice of the Lord, talking to the Lord, but also listening to God. Like God will, and how does God, and see, this is a whole nother podcast, because we could go into, well, how does God talk to me? Well, in your intimate moments, God can give you thoughts. God can give you like a vision that comes across your mind. God can just show you things, or you can hear a word, or you could, or someone will randomly come into your mind, and there is a like a deed or something that you need to do. These are ways that God will talk back to you in prayer. So, but here's the thing though, when we say we got to control that flesh, the humility has to come in, and we have to say, God, I got to detox because I just really been feeling a certain way. Like, like this is where we're real, raw, and relevant to God. I call it the three R's. When we are real, raw, and relevant with God, God can heal, God can deliver, God can strengthen us. He can strengthen our flesh, He can strengthen our soul so that it can get in alignment with the spirit man. So God can do all of these things if we allow humility to take place. So when we come to God in prayer, we got to be real, raw, and relevant and say, God, I just feel a certain way. My wife made me mad. My husband did this. I'm sick right now. I'm feeling a certain kind of way. So before I even try to talk to you, God, I need to detox. I need to let go of some things. See, a lot of times we miss that, and we gotta say, we gotta figure out where we need to detox. Because let me tell you, detoxification is an important step when you're trying to go into prayer. When you because when we come to the throne of God, we cannot come to the throne of God any kind of way. We have to make sure we wash ourselves. There's a cleansing that has to take place. And that's where our soul tries to interfere. So there is a cleansing that needs to take place before you come to the throne of God. Well, I would say this: if you know that you got certain things going on in your heart, a lot of times I don't. And a lot of times I don't know if I got something in my heart. Some things aren't as evident, but the Bible says that no man really knows the heart but God. But there are things that we know. Now we know we shouldn't have said something. We know we shouldn't have acted a certain way. We know we shouldn't have thought those thoughts. We know we should. So there are things that we just know, right? So let's just be real. But the deeper inner parts of our hearts, God says no man knows but Him. And so, but here's the thing: when we come to God in prayer, we gotta first check ourselves. I say, God, this is one way I check myself before I come to God. I know that my flesh could be weak. I know there is no perfect man here on earth. And if you're trying to act like you perfect when you come to God every single time, you done already missed it, bro. I'm telling you, we got to be real, raw, and relevant, because a lot of times before I even start a prayer, I detox. I intentionally detox because I don't know what I'm harboring from yesterday. I don't know what I'm harboring from this morning. I don't know. And so I say, God, when I'm entering into this prayer room, I know my flesh can try to hinder what you're going to try to do in this moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to cleanse my mind. God, remove every thought that is not like you. Cleanse my mind. Oh God, I pluck up every thought that is not like you, that is not pure, that is not holy, that is not acceptable in your sight. God, I need you to pluck up every thought right now that is not like you. Okay. And so I deal with my mind first. So this is me detoxing before I really enter into the realm of prayer that I really want to get to. So I need to detox, right? I got to ask God to cleanse my mind. And so I also deal with my heart. I say, cleanse my mind, cleanse my heart, and renew the right spirit within me. This is one of the first things that I do before I enter into a realm of prayer with God, because I don't want my flesh to present some type of void between me and God. And so, in order for there to be no void between me and God, I detox, I let go, and I say, when it comes to the heart, I say, God, take away any form of pride, anger, bitter, bitterness, unforgiveness, jealousy, envy, strife, malice, contention, self-centeredness, self-righteousness, uh, uh, um, um, anything. And I'm in the spirit when I say this, right? As I'm in the spirit, I will call out all these things that the Bible talks about, that I know I might have encountered, or something like that. I will begin to call out all of these things before I really enter into prayer. I will call out these things and ask God to cleanse my heart. cleanse my mind and renew the right spirit within me. Because as I'm coming to you, God, I don't want there to be a fleshy interference with you. Okay. So this is one of the ways that we have to detox, because our spirit is always willing, but that flesh, baby, that flesh will get you in a whole lot of trouble in the natural. But in the supernatural, we don't, it's like a hidden, the flesh is like a hidden obstacle that we don't even know is there. Why do I say that? Because when we enter into prayer, a lot of times we don't deal with our flesh. A lot of times when we enter into prayer, we just go in and be like, well, God, thank you, Lord, for this day. Bless my family, bless my kids, Lord, bless this job. And we have this whole list. Like y'all say, whole list. It's a whole list of stuff that we just go straight into, right? And so, and we don't really develop the intimacy that we need with God through prayer, because we go straight to the list. But God is saying, no, 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 no. Let's backtrack, because there is a deeper level of prayer. Some of us are still on the outer courts of prayer. But God said, I need you to get in the inner court, and I need you to go into the holy place. And then I need you to tap into that most holy place, right? So there are levels to your prayer. But we know that in that outer part, there has to be a cleansing, right? There has to be a cleansing before you enter into that intimacy with God. You got to ask yourself, am I doing the first thing before I enter into prayer? Am I doing a fleshy cleansing? Because I got to clean this flesh up, because I don't want there to be like this fog between me and God, like I'm the only one talking, and I got this whole to-do list that I need God to break through and just do, and I don't really deal with me. And so I want everybody to hear me and hear me well. There has to be a time in prayer, and I always say at the beginning, where you first deal with you. You got to understand, before they could get to that most holy place, right? When we're talking about the tabernacle, y'all know about the tabernacle, right? Before they could get into that most holy place, there had to be a cleansing. There had to be a pardoning of sins, right? Like, I gotta cleanse this stuff off of me, like the heaviness from this day, the frustrations from this day, the stress from this day, the anger from this day, the toil from this day. Like, there are so many things that you do in a day, and then when we go to God, we just want to go straight into the most holy place. Well, we don't really go into that most holy place, because we didn't take the steps to get to that most holy place. And so that's where a checking of yourself has to come in, because whether you know it or not, our flesh is a silent blocker. And why do I say silent blocker, like a hindrance to prayer? Because we don't even recognize that our flesh is a barrier between the intimacy that we have with God. We don't even recognize that there is something that's like an interference. So you may look at somebody and be like, well, how they get all of that? Like, they were praying and then they prophesied and then they, like, how they get all of that? Because there is a level of intimacy that has to be had. You got to ask God to cleanse you before you get really intimate in the things of God, in prayer. Like, if you look at me, I'm a prophet. Yes, I am a prophet. But there had, for me, before I can begin to go into those deeper realms and see and prophesy, declare and decree, you be like, how Prophet Trish get all of that, right? Because I have to go through a cleansing every single day, because I know that if I'm going to tap into the most holy place and I'm going to release the utterances of God, I got to deal with flesh. But listen, this is not just for prophets or pastors or teachers. God will speak to anybody that is humble enough to hear, right? You don't have to have no title behind your name. All you got to have is humility. My God, today, see, we got to understand that when we have humility, the first thing that we deal with is ourselves, right? When we're trying to talk to God, the first thing that we deal with is ourselves. We have to cleanse ourselves. We can't talk about the wife or the husband or the sister or the brother. No, 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 no. God, this is about you and God. This is your intimacy time with God. God is trying to deal with you. He's trying to deal with your heart. He's trying to deal with your flesh. And he'll deal with all them other folks at another time and a place in their life. Okay. So this is about you. If you want to hear God at a level that you have not heard before, if you want to develop a deeper intimacy with God, the first thing that can make prayer seem like it's hard. And when I say hard, what I'm talking about, because anybody could be like, well, Lord, and just say things. What I'm talking about when I say what makes prayer hard is when, like, you don't really feel like there's something. You just feel like you're just talking. And you don't feel like that intimate moment with God. You don't feel the intimacy with God, the connection with God. You just know you're talking and you're telling God what you want. But there's no true intimacy, right? Because you have not learned to control flesh or to get flesh in order or to submit flesh to God before you enter into the spirit. Okay. So that's one of the first things. I know I said I had four, but I've only been able to break down one because I think just dealing with this flesh, oh my gosh, you've got to deal with your flesh before you can go to a deeper realm with God. And so we got to understand there's so many other things that I'm going to break down in this, how many part teaching in this podcast, but we're going to get this and we're going to learn how to go to another level in the things of God and hearing God and in being intimate with God. And we have to first deal with our flesh. Like God, like Jesus said, he said, watch and pray so that you do not fall into temptation. What falls into temptation? It's not your spirit, it's your flesh. So God is saying your flesh will fall into temptation for wanting to, cuss somebody out, wanting to drink a little bit, smoke a little bit. That's your flesh, right? Wanting to hold bitterness in your heart. That's your flesh, right? So God said, watch and pray so that you don't fall into temptation. So you got to cover your flesh so that your flesh doesn't give in to the lust of the eye, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. Because when it's time to enter into prayer, when it's time to talk to God about whatever it is, your spirit is willing, but your flesh is weak because you didn't submit your flesh unto God. All right. I hope that bless you guys. That was it. I only got the one today, but listen, this is going to be locked and loaded for the next few weeks. Y'all don't want to miss this. We're talking about prayer. We're talking about how to go to another realm, another dimension, how to get over that hump when prayer seems like it's hard. Okay. When it seems like it's so hard to pray, like I'm trying to pray and it's like I'm falling asleep and I'm tired and all this stuff is happening all around me. And sometimes it just seems like it's just so hard to pray, Jesus. I know that is more than just me. But when that happens, we got to understand what it is we need to do. And the first thing we got to deal with is that flesh. Okay. That soul realm, the mind, the will, the intellect. We got to deal with all of that. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. All right. Make sure you share this broadcast with somebody. Let them know. Tag them and say, you got to hear this. Tricia went in on prayer. She helping us get our whole life. Y'all say whole life. Yeah, there you go. Whole life. All right. Until next week, I will see you on next week on another fabulous episode of The Interview with your girl, Trish M. Have a blessed day, y'all.